Ahead and call the Senate to order. The Sergeant at Arms will please secure the chamber doors. Members, please take your seats. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. President?
Uh-oh. I didn't have the information, I'm sorry. So we are very pleased today to have Father Richard Meadows of St. James Episcopal Church in Baltimore, Maryland, guest of the Distinguished Senator from the 41st District. Please rise for the invocation.
Mr. President, Senator Carter, and my representative, Senator Antonio Hayes, thank you for the invitation. If you just do me a favor, and if you would so, reach towards the person next to you and hold their hand for me. Let us pray. To the Creator of all things bright and beautiful, wonderful and wise, Creator of land and sea, we beseech Thee to be present with us. We stand among your gifted, your graceful, and your humble servants. They've been called to govern and lead us into a beloved community of one heart and mind. Although not monolithic, we are diverse enough to know that we have a common ground and we are different as the stars that shine. We come in many hues, textures, connected by the colors upon the palettes of love. We are willing to be blended by you to the tapestries called life. Create in us clean hearts, renew a right spirit within us. Make us the symphony that plays a song with many scores and melodies that bring forth a harmony that is pleasing to your ears. Hear our prayer, O Lord, and save us from the danger that lies ahead. Free us from the fear and give us sound minds filled with power and love, the kind of love that moves mountains, calms the seas, quenches the raging fires, gives your servants spirits of discernment, words of wisdom, and the tolerance to listen to each other, understand one another's communities, to collectively solve the problems that are solvable, and the courage to work across this gulf that is wide as an aisle. Let them know they are all within an arm's length of each other. Let them hear one another, understand one another, and struggle with their differences until they know they've wrestled with you, O God. Place upon them the mark that symbolizes good and tantalizes them with possibilities of a better citizenry and a better government. Lest we forget your mercy, let the sun shine upon us, just as the brightness of a new day, and let that day be this day. Let us all say within our hearts, let it be so.
Amen. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Chair recognizes the Senator from the 41st District.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Father Richard Meadows. It's an honor to have you back, Father Meadows.
Senators, it's a little bit loud in here. Please let's give our attention to the Senator.
Father Meadows is, of course, rector of St. James Episcopal Church, where I was Christian, baptized, and went through confirmation, and a longtime family church. He's also the rector of St. James, where our honoree and their family are from, and where we all met about, many centuries ago. So I just wanted to say, and also St. James is celebrating its 200th year of service and giving to the community. So thank you very much for being here, Father.
Thank you so much.
I'd like to have the prayer journalist.
Without objection, we will certainly journalize the invocation. Wonderful start to the morning. I didn't realize that the Episcopalians did a confirmation too. Didn't realize that. Yeah, very good. Learn something new every day in the Senate. Yeah. Excellent. All right. Any further? Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 46 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland is now in session. We do have one resolution today. We'll go back to the Senator from the 41st District.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, it is my great honor and privilege today to recognize Dr. Lawrence Jackson. Dr. Jackson is a lifelong family friend, but he is an incredible, incredible author of 6 books, including award-winning books, Chester B. Himes, a biography, The Indigent Generation, a narrative history of African-American writers and critics, My Father's Name, a Black Virginia family after the Civil War, and Ralph Ellison, Emergence of Genius. He's been awarded by Harper's Magazine, Paris Review, and Best American Essays have published his criticism and nonfiction. Professor Jackson earned a PhD in English and American Literature at Stanford University and has had fellowships at the Guggenheim Foundation and the National Humanities Center and the William J. Fulbright Program. He began his teaching career at Howard University in 1997 and is now Bloomberg Distinguished Professor of English and History at our own Johns Hopkins University, where he directs the Billie Holiday Center for Liberation Arts. His latest books are Hold It Real Still, Clint Eastwood, Race and the Cinema of the American West, and my favorite, A Shelter, A Black Tale from the Homeland, Baltimore, published in 2022. In addition to his writing and research, Professor Jackson launched and serves as director of the Billie Holiday Center for Liberation Arts, an initiative that showcases the unique arts, history, and culture of Baltimore. Founded in 2017, the project fosters organic links between the intellectual life of Johns Hopkins University and the city's historic African American communities, celebrating the strengths and the potential of both. Without further ado, I'd like to, I believe there is a resolution honoring Dr. Jackson at the desk. Thank you.
Clerk will read the resolution in full.
Be it hereby known to all that the Senate of Maryland offers its sincerest congratulations to Dr. Lawrence P. Jackson in recognition of Black History Month. We honor your unwavering commitment to uplifting people of color and fostering positive change within our community. The entire membership extends its best wishes on this memorable occasion and directs this resolution be presented on this 21st day of February, 2024.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? If so, the clerk will take the call. To Dr. Lawrence P. Jackson, the Senate of Maryland unanimously celebrates you and congratulates you for your wonderful work in this Black History Month, but also your prolific writing and your impact on our community. Congratulations and thank you.
Mr. President and members, I was reminded by the senator from the 40th District to say that Dr. Jackson is also a member of the Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity.
And he's also joined by his, all of a sudden there's a lot of members that just pop up for the picture. This is details. All right. Dr. Jackson's also joined by his mother as well, so we're pleased to have her here joining us. Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thanks for joining us here today, and look forward to reading the book, Shelter. All right. Let's see. Other introductions today. Other introductions. Chair recognizes Senator from Montgomery County, followed by the Senator from Baltimore City and County.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the floor, we have the Doctor of the Day, who also happens to be my constituent from District 15, and he's my longtime friend, Dr. Larry Green. Give him a warm Senate welcoming.
Thank you, Dr. Green. We won't hold your friendship with the chair against you, I promise you. So, yeah, no. Yes, Senator from Baltimore City and County. No, appreciate your work, sincerely. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, today is Maryland Independent College and University today. I'm honored to represent in the 43rd District. Our independent colleges are Goucher College, Notre Dame University of Maryland, the Johns Hopkins University, and Loyola University of Maryland. And today we are joined by the president, Terrence Sawyer, of Loyola University, if you please stand, as well as our students from Loyola University, if you will stand.
Welcome.
President Sawyer, President and Servant Leader, was recognized recently as among the Power 100 by the Daily Record. So, Senators, please offer my constituents a warm Senate welcome.
Welcome, welcome. Welcome, President Sawyer. Senator from Montgomery County, followed by the Senator from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Mr. President. In addition to independent colleges, we have Leadership Montgomery Day. And as a proud graduate of the class of 2003, I want to recognize that we've got business, nonprofit, faith, community, civic leaders from all over Montgomery. The program is more than 30 years old with over 2,500 graduates in all fields. And remarkably, they do about more than 25,000 hours of volunteer service each year as part of the program. So please look out for Leadership Montgomery folks, and please welcome them in the galleries.
Welcome, Leadership Montgomery. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. Senator from Baltimore County.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Please join me in welcoming students, and I think they're behind me, from the wonderful Stevenson University, which is in District 11. They punch way above their weight with a couple of thousand folks there. Most of their graduates are from Maryland, stay in Maryland, and I'd also like you to welcome President Elliot Hirschman, who is also a constituent in District 11.
Wonderful. Welcome to Stevenson. Welcome, President. Good to see you all. Welcome. Senator from Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Mr. President. It must be Academia Day because we also have with us in the gallery, I think behind me, our faculty, staff, and students from the University System of Maryland. It is USM Advocacy Day. Just give them a round of applause and a warm Senate welcome.
Welcome, welcome. Thank you all for joining us. Additional introductions. Oh yes, Senator from Montgomery, our Majority Leader. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I hear that there are up in the gallery some people from the Montgomery County Medical Society.
Yes, I believe in the balcony behind us, yes.
Okay.
Welcome. Welcome. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you all for being here today. All right, any further introductions? Oh, yes, Senator from 30th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. I can't tell from this angle, but I believe there are students up there from the Chesapeake Bay Foundation Student Leadership Group who are the next generation of Bay advocates. Not here yet?
I don't think they're here yet.
Okay, I will pause.
We'll come back when they get here.
Thank you.
When we get notice that they arrive. Great. All right, any further introductions? Yes, Senator from the 37th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just noticed we've got some representatives from the Easton Volunteer Fire Department that have joined us this morning. They're in the balcony above you.
Thank you to the Easton Volunteer Fire Department crew. We appreciate your service. Thank you. All right, it looks like that may do it for now. Pause for the moment. Just before we jump in, good news yesterday, it appears, a big investment, and thanks to the Senator from the 45th District for pointing out, a big federal dollar investment for replacement of the light rail cars for MTA, which is going to be a big and well-needed investment for those outdated infrastructure. So positive news there. All right. Let's go ahead and so we consider the reading of the journal from the prior legislative day. We still have a few more bills coming in. This is Senate Calendar 45. Clerk will read the bills.
Senate Bill 1165, Senator Lewis Young, Public Health Prohibition on Transfer of Human Immunodeficiency Virus, Repeal, Rules.
Majority Leader moves so we consider the reading of the bills. They will be referred to the Rules Committee. We have the Senate Bond Initiatives, Calendar 32. Clerk will read the bond initiatives.
Number 1, Senator Ellis, Willing Helper Society, Budget and Taxation.
Majority Leader moves so we consider the reading of the bond initiatives. They will be referred to the Capital Budget Subcommittee. In terms of timing, when are we looking about deadlines for legislative bond initiative introductions?
Last week.
Last week? Oh, yes, okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, so get those in. We got to start getting full calculation of what the needs are out there. All right, we are now up to, we have some House bills. All right. Calendar number 4. Clerk will read the bills.
House Bill 39, Delegate R. Lewis, Residential Service Agencies Reimbursement, Personal Assistance Services, Home Care Workers' Rights Act of 2024, Finance.
Majority Leader moves so be considered the reading of the bills. They'll be referred to their appropriate standing committees. My delegate's got a bill headed over. Very good. All right. Let's go to unfinished business from yesterday. Let's go with Education, Energy, and the Environment. The first report we have is number 9. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 135, Senator Ellis, Work Group to Study Funding for the Western Port Wastewater Treatment Facility Establishment, favorable.
Recognize the senator from the 10th District as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 135. The bill establishes the work group to study funding for Western Port Wastewater Treatment Facility. By December 1, 2024, the work group must report its findings and recommendations to the governor and the General Assembly. The bill takes effect July 1, 2024, and terminates June 30, 2025. There are no committee amendments, and the fiscal impact is none. I move the favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 135 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 268, Chair, Education, Energy, and the Environment Committee, Chesapeake and Atlantic Coastal-Based Critical Area Program Enforcement, favorable.
Recognize the senator from District 3 as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a departmental bill. The Critical Area Program affects land that borders the bay, tidal tributaries, and tidal wetlands. It was actually established in 1984, and it hasn't been updated since 2008. There are 64 jurisdictions in the state that are part of this program. The goal is to improve water quality, conserve wildlife habitats, and manage land use. The reason this bill is brought forward is to ensure consistency and in terms of processes and procedures for implementation in the various jurisdictions. There were no amendments to this bill, so I move for the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objection? Oh, yes, Chair recognizes the senator from 37.
I just had a quick question about the
Will
bill.
the floor leader yield for a question? Senator may proceed.
Certainly.
We have a lot of critical areas in our district, and I had a phone call to ask me about the bill and where it came from and why it was moving forward. You said it was consistency?
Yes, as I mentioned, it is a departmental bill, and there needs to be some consistency in implementation. Actually, the local jurisdictions implement the aspects of this critical area program, but they're governed by state law. So this just ensures greater consistency in the implementation.
Yeah, nothing's changed with the critical area law. This is just enforcement.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Chair recognizes the minority leader on the report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just floor leader,
Will
continue.
the floor leader yield?
Yield,
Senator
please.
may proceed.
Just to follow up there, you said it changes the enforcement or it strengthens enforcement?
It ensures consistency in implementation.
Okay, and then what about enforcement? Is that going through the Attorney General's office now? Is that different than it's been done previously?
It can still go through, it still goes through the Attorney General's office. The only difference is this bill rescinds a 30-day waiting period and eliminates kind of after the fact implementation.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, on the report, any further discussion? If not, any objection to the report? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 268 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 299, Chair, Education, Energy, and the Environment Committee, Coast Smart Council, Duties and Authority, favorable.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 38th District as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 299, it's a departmental bill. It allows the Coast Smart Council within the Department of Natural Resources to develop eligibility criteria standards and procedures for categorical exemptions from Coast Smart requirements for proposed capital projects that have been designed to include adaptation and resiliency features to prevent or mitigate damage to the maximum extent possible. The bill also authorizes this council to recommend regulations for adoption by the Secretary of Natural Resources. There were no committee amendments, no fiscal impact. I move for a favorable committee report on SB 299.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 299 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Senators, I don't know if you can sort of hear in the background the grinding noise. We'll have a conversation with the Secretary of DGS. It is not supposed to start until 2:30 every day. And so in order to maintain order in the chamber, it should not be happening right now. So I don't know if anybody on the second floor is listening, but now is not when we should be grinding out the brick when the Senate is in session. So we'll see, hopefully, that is soon dealt with. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 367, Senator Mouts, Natural Resources Antlerless Deer Hunting Programs Authorization, favorable.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 35th District as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill authorizes a person to receive a raffle ticket for each antlerless deer hunted by the person during a raffle program that is held in January, has as its objective the hunting of antlerless deer, and was previously held at least once from January 1st, 2020 through January 30th, 2024. The bill would take effect July 1st, 2024. There are no amendments. I would like to move for adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 367 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 507, Senator Bailey, Special Chesapeake Bay Coastal Sport Fishing License, Non-Residence License Fee, favorable with one amendment.
Recognizing the senator from District 9 as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 507 deals with a Special Chesapeake Bay Coastal Fishing License. It raises the fee for non-residents only from $50 to $100. There is one amendment which adds a co-sponsor. I urge the adoption of the committee amendment and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now is the amended report. Any discussion? Yes, Chair recognizes the minority leader on the report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a question for the floor leader,
Floor leader
please.
yield. Pearso, senator may proceed.
Thank you very much. Fiscal note says that currently there's about 9,200 licenses that are issued. That's expected to stay the same, even with the fee doubled from $50 to $100?
Yeah, the estimate assumes that the same number of non-residents are issued licenses in fiscal 25 and in future years.
Okay, so they don't, the fiscal note does not take into consideration if anybody decides not to based on the new price of the license, right? They're saying it's going to stay consistent.
They are saying it's going to stay consistent, yes.
They potentially will. The money goes into the Fisheries Research and Development Fund at DNR. Do you know what that group or fund does?
Yes, so there is, sorry, need glasses. The fund deals with recreational harvest data and gathering estimates for recreational catch and effort.
So are they the group that does set limits and quotas on the fishery?
Would the senator mind if I defer to the bill sponsor?
Sure. Oh, sure.
All right, let's yield to the bill sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Question was, what does the Fisheries Research and Development Fund do with respect to recreational fishing, and are they the ones that set limits and quotas on the catch?
So they don't set the limits and the quotas. And that is, as you're well familiar, we're having a big issue right now with striped bass, and we're dealing with the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission. And the biggest issue is we've got 250,000 people that participate in the fishery, and we have not one data point that says how many fish they catch. And so what the intent is and how they can do this is they can then use the people that will be hired with this extra money to actually have additional resources to manage and figure out that data so that we can have accurate data when we manage the rockfish fishery, so that we don't take away jobs and people's ability to go fishing on charter boats, which is threatened right now.
Okay, I appreciate that, and that's obviously what my concerns were, given all the conversation we've had with charter boat captains and the recreational as well too. Has DNR made the commitment that if this increases, that they will put the staff in place to get the type of information that we need to better make the decisions that they have, in my opinion, failed to have made in this last round of quotas?
Bill Leader was just reading from an email that we got from DNR that was their intention.
Okay, all right, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
If I could just clarify one little point about this bill, and it says non-residents, but it's not for every non-resident. This is just if they bring their boat. If a non-resident wants to go fishing and go down a pier and fish, there's going to be no change. This is only if they bring their boat and they buy the boat license that allows every single person to fish on that boat with this one fee. And this was brought by constituents in many rural areas to my office as being on the Sportsman's Caucus about the fact is their opportunities for residents were being threatened by the number of people that were coming from out of state using our ramps, using our Chesapeake Bay resources for the same exact price that every other resident in the state had. So it only affects if they bring their boat.
Okay, great, and that's very important clarification, so I appreciate you bringing that up. Thank you to the floor leader. Well, thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. All right, any further discussion on the amended report? If not, any objections to the report? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Further amendments? Seeing none, Senate Bill 507 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 508, Senator Bailey, hunting non-resident Sitka deer stamp fee alteration, favorable with 2 amendments.
Chair recognizes the senator from District 9 as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, last year, Senate Bill 327 established the resident and non-resident Sitka deer stamp. This is separate from the white-tailed deer stamp. This bill, as amended, raises the fee for a non-resident to $200. There is one amendment which has a co-sponsor and another amendment which deals with the fee. I would like to move the committee amendment and the favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves to the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 508 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 533, Senator Gallion, fishing and hunting licenses, trout stamps, complimentary license and stamp exemption, veterans determined to be unemployable.
Recognizing the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill authorizes the Department of Natural Resources to issue a lifetime complimentary angler's license, a lifetime complimentary Chesapeake Bay and coastal sport fishing license, and/or a lifetime complimentary hunting license to an individual who certifies that they are an American veteran who the Department of Veterans Affairs determines to be unemployable. That individual is either a Maryland resident or an out-of-state person whose state of residence extends similar privileges to out-of-state persons. There is one committee amendment, and that amendment simply corrects a number of cross-references in the bill. I'd like to move the amendment and ask for adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, chair recognizes Senator from Montgomery County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Seeing that there's an amendment on this bill and I've not had a chance to take a look at it, I would ask that the bill be laid over under the rules.
All right, the senator's motion is in order. The bill will be laid over under the rules.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Is that the last one on that one? It is. All right, let's go to calendar number 10. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 29, Senator Kagan, Special Elections, Procedures and General Assembly Vacancies and Ties, favorable with 3 amendments. This is a constitutional amendment.
Recognizing the bill sponsor is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, we've been talking about this for many years. Roughly 25% of the General Assembly has now been selected rather than elected by the voters, and they want to have their voice heard. As amended, and I'm just going to say again, as amended, this bill will mean that anyone who has been appointed, nominated by a Democratic or Republican Central Committee to the Senate or House, serving in the first 2 years would face the voters in the presidential election. So the voters would have the opportunity to ratify the Central Committee's nomination, the governor's appointment. In the 3rd and 4th year, they will serve the balance of the term and then would either face the voters or not. The 3 amendments, the first is technical, the second modifies the bill to make it essentially identical to the bill that was sponsored by the good senator from District 12 that this body has voted for twice unanimously. And the third one just clarifies and takes out another piece of the bill as adopted. So, Mr. President, I'd like to move the adoption of the 3 committee amendments passed unanimously and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 3 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, chair recognizes the minority whip.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wonder if the floor leader would yield for questions.
Appears so. Senator may proceed.
Thank you. So I think I'm supportive of this idea of making sure we give people an opportunity to elect or ratify a choice when it happens early in the term. And I understand, so the compromise here is we didn't want to have special elections in like October of the year before the election or anything like that. So we wanted to keep it to where the first 2 years, basically, of the term.
It's not
quite 2
exactly
years.
2 years,
Right.
but it depends on when the primary is held in the presidential year. But it has to, as long as someone was appointed 55 days or more before the presidential primary year, they would be on the ballot.
So this year, our filing deadline was February 9th, and we had some interesting surprises on February 9th in a lot of these federal races. So if this bill had been in effect, if someone had been appointed earlier than 55 days before the filing deadline, okay, which would have put it back into probably, I guess, December or maybe even late November.
Correct.
Okay. And these will be, there won't be a special election, but they would then stand in the upcoming presidential primary?
Correct.
And then for the general election, of course. Okay. And this is not, originally this bill had some things about voting by mail, and we're not changing any rules regarding that.
That was my preference, and that's the way I brought it in. But sometimes, as you know, Senator, perfect is the enemy of the good. This is a compromise version that this body has passed unanimously twice.
Or sometimes good is the improvement from something maybe somebody wouldn't have liked. So either way, it works well.
something
Okay.
like that.
So just to be clear, so it's 55 days before. So does the committee appoint a replacement in that meantime?
The committee, you mean
I'm
the,
sorry, the Central Committee,
committees?
or is this a vacancy?
So current law is that if there's a vacancy, the party of the
vacancy.
vacant slot nominates someone, sends the name to the governor, who officially is the person who appoints it.
Yeah.
And we've had many of those because the Moore Miller administration has tapped some of our many talented colleagues. So they are serving now. This year, there's obviously, this term, there's no change.
Right.
This bill, if approved by the General Assembly, would be on the ballot in November, and if approved, would go into effect and govern for the next term.
Okay. And I think my question, I'm just making sure I understand the bill. If a vacancy, so a lot of times this happens with a new governor of either party where they may tap some of our quality people here in the legislature. So if they were to, so if hypothetically there was a new governor in 2027, or even the current governor selects somebody from the legislature, they would then be, there'd be an appointment made in the meantime by the committee recommending to the governor and him or her appointing, and then they would serve until the primary.
Correct.
Well, until the general election, I guess,
Until-
of the midterm year, of the presidential year.
Correct.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to walk around. I was just trying to be
No,
sure.
no, that's all right.
Okay.
It's- Yes.
So if someone were to have party folks, we both have to deal with our own party apparatus. If people would be concerned that you're taking power away from the local center, you're really not. You're maybe a little bit, but we're trying to say, hey, you still get the appointment rights, which gives that person a leg up in a potential
100%.
election.
That
Right.
person, the appointee by the Democratic or Republican Central Committee, when facing the voters in the midterm, the presidential year, would be running as an incumbent.
Right.
And presumably would have the ability to have a leg up in terms of
the kind of things that
endorsements,
candidates do.
fundraising,
Right.
name recognition, all that. But if they're doing a bad job and somebody wanted to take them on, there would be democracy.
Or if there are concerns about the appointment process or whatever. Exactly.
100%.
The voters get a chance. Okay. Thank you very much. I think this is a good bill and look forward to supporting it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. All right, Chair recognizes Senator from District 7 on the
Thanks.
report,
But,
on the amendments.
Floor Leader, just a quick question, clarification.
Sure.
The 55 days, is that before the primary?
Before the primary. Sorry?
The filing deadline?
50.
Because for the
Before
filing
the-
deadline, they're in office for less than a year.
Sorry, yes, sorry, my bad. 55 days before the filing deadline, because remember that the ballots have to be
No,
printed
I understand all
and
that. I'm just trying
finalized
to.
and
So
mailed
really,
to our-
it's only for those people who were appointed from when we're sworn in the second Wednesday of January till probably middle of December. So it's about an 11-month.
So remember that in the past, we used to have our elections in September, we've had them in July, so it's
But
not.
as of now-
It's not clear
okay.
when it's that.
But
But
as
this
the-
is a special election that basically is concurrent with the presidential election. But it saves our counties money because they don't have to run special elections, they don't have to, they can just do an add-on and make sure that that's, but there's democracy and the voters will get to have their voice.
I understand that. We kept using the word 2 years, or the phrase 2 years. I just trying to figure out exactly what the 55 days was. So
Years of
thank you.
service, ultimately, by the time the general election happens.
Got it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Chair recognizes the Minority Leader on the amendments.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Will the floor leader
again,
yield?
please.
Senator may proceed.
I think it is a little confusing where we're talking about the dates, and I'm not sure if you weren't correct the first time or not, but it says if the vacancy occurs on or before the date that is 55 days before the deadline. So that's the vacancy occurring. That's not necessarily someone having been appointed yet or not. Is that right?
So that can't work, because if the vacancy, hold on. If yes, the vacancy occurring, that can't be because the central committee needs to meet and appoint, and that person serves until a new person is elected and sworn in. Hold on, where are you?
Senator, I believe the.
I was just looking at the of the reprint, and I might be on the wrong section, but page 3 at the bottom of the page, where it talks about the 3 different ways that this could occur.
I'm joining you on page 3.
Bottom, all the bold print.
Bottom of the page.
I believe the Central Committee cannot meet until a vacancy has been created.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
No, that's true, but then the central committee has to advertise the vacancy. People have to apply. They have the meeting, hopefully transparently, pick the person. The governor has, I think, 15 days to then appoint the person. And all of that has to happen and have that person's name on the ballot in time for the ballots to be printed, sent to our people abroad.
Right. So that's why you're getting the 55
That's
days
why it has
for
to
the
be done early.
vacancy process to the filling of the vacancy process to occur. Right.
But it says as long as it happens 55 days. Right. As long as everything has to happen 55 days. Right. It's not the appointment's not relevant, it's the vacancy.
Okay. All right, I'm told by council that it is the vacancy and not the appointment.
Okay. That's
So if there's no appointment by the Central Committee, but there is an announced vacancy 55 days in advance, then it's really democracy, and lots of people can file, and no one would be running as an incumbent because there was just a vacancy declared.
Right.
They can still make the appointment.
Right, no, of course, no, they can still make the appointment, but in terms of the election during the presidential year, the special election that is concurrent with the presidential election, there might not be, in that situation that you just said, there might not be an incumbent that has been nominated by the Central Committee and appointed, as long as it's 55 days.
And obviously, the filing deadline remains so
Correct.
that anybody can file
Unchanged.
to run against us. And finally, was there any conversation about or any changes to campaign finance rules with respect to fundraising?
Thank you for asking. I believe we should have, but the committee resisted. There was not a comfort level in that. There is literally one person who has been appointed, who was appointed days before we reconvened, who, if this constitutional amendment were in effect, one person would be not allowed to have raised any money and would be facing the voters with probably an empty campaign chest. But that was not the committee's will, so that is not an option.
The rules remain the same. If you're in this body, you are not fundraising
Correct.
during our 90-day
Correct.
period. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
President.
All right. Thank you, Senators. On the amendments, any further discussion on the amendments? Any objection to the three committee amendments? Without objection, the three committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 29 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 165, Senator Heddleman, Education, Coaches, Mental Health Training, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing the President Pro Tem as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, we remain in a behavioral health crisis, particularly amongst our young people. What we have learned through this bill is that our young people who are involved in youth sports are uniquely having unique dangers associated with the potential for behavioral health problems. And what this bill seeks to do is to make sure that the coaches who are with our young kids who are in these sporting environments, that those coaches are trained on to be able to identify some of those things that could indicate that there is a behavioral health concern. And so that's really what this bill does. It develops guidelines for public schools to train coaches and recognize the indicators of mental illness and behavioral distress in students, including depression, trauma, violence, youth suicide, and substance abuse. There are 2 committee amendments. The first is technical and adds co-sponsors. Amendment number 2 alters and clarifies the term athletic program as it applies to elementary and secondary public schools. The fiscal impact is minimal. I move adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objection to the amendments? Without objection, 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Okay, so just making sure we're all okay. On the amended report, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable report as amended is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 165 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 180, Senator Hester, Public and Non-Public Schools, Auto-Injectable Epinephrine and Bronchodilators, Use, Availability, Training, and Policies, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognize the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, currently in all our Maryland schools, we have access to EpiPens in case a child has an anaphylactic shock. However, they do not have access to a bronchodilator in case of an asthma attack. In those cases, unless they have paperwork, the students must wait while the school calls 911. And during this period, their condition could worsen. And so basically what this bill does is it authorizes a school nurse or appropriate personnel to administer a stock bronchodilator. Senate Bill 180 requires the Department of Health to work with the school boards to authorize and establish a policy to obtain, administer, and train school nurses and other school personnel to administer the bronchodilators. It also requires nurses and school personnel to complete the training to be authorized to administer the bronchodilator. There are 2 committee amendments. These were collaboratively worked out with the Department of Health. The first is technical. The second one clarifies the terminology regarding school personnel that may administer a stock bronchodilator. It requires the Department of Health in consultation with county boards to establish the policy, and it clarifies that certain reporting requirements only apply to administration of a stock bronchodilator. This bill passed our committee unanimously, and I move the adoption of the 2 amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 180 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 271, Chair, Education, Energy, and the Environment Committee, Election Law Revisions, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognize the Vice Chair of the Committee is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this departmental bill by the State Board of Elections does 3 small things. One is it requires our courts to report when someone is sentenced and committed to prison so that they can be removed from our voter rolls to keep them accurate. Number 2 is requires access to government buildings for early voting sites, not just for election day. And 3, it clarifies and modifies that the chair and the treasurer, that officers of our party central committees, if running for re-election, do not have to resign from those leadership positions. The 2 amendments do exactly what I just described, so I move the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any? Yes, Chair recognizes the senator from the 28th District on the amendments.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I have a question for the floor leader.
Senator may proceed.
Of course.
Yeah. And, I have a question when access to government buildings. So when you say government buildings, you're talking about state, local, county, city buildings like armories or?
Yes, all of those places. So libraries, schools, so these are all places that are available on election day. We just always need places for free on early voting to keep our county expenditures as low as possible and yet to allow people to come and vote where they know where they're going. There tend to be bus lines. It tends to be accessible to people, and they know where they are in their communities.
Okay, thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
All right, on the 2 amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 271 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 425, Senator Heddleman, Maryland Meals for Achievement In-Class Breakfast Program Alterations, Maryland Meals for Achievement Flexibility Act of 2024, favorable with 1 amendment.
Recognize the senator from the 43rd District as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this is an updating of the existing program where we allow middle school and high school students to grab and go. In order to participate in our breakfast programs. We were finding that sometimes children weren't able to receive their meals because maybe they just got there, they couldn't sit down in the cafeteria. And so what this bill does is extends it to our elementary schools and allows those that are currently participating in the program to utilize this grab and go option. It also is allowing for multiple delivery systems. They can use a cafeteria still, they can use a cart, or during class. It also does not, we're advised that it does not add anything to the additional costs. There is 1 committee amendment that adds all of the members of the committees as co-sponsors. Needless to say, it was passed unanimously. I ask for the adoption of the committee amendment and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 1 committee amendment and the favorable committee report. Chair recognizes the minority leader on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a quick question for the floor leader.
Senator may proceed.
Thank you. Just what is an in-classroom breakfast program?
Oh, that is where someone would walk along with a cart and they put the meals in the classroom.
Is this like during a break from the education process, or is this like while they're
Could
learning?
be before each school would probably have it differently. I'm sure each school has different times when there are breaks, maybe in between classes. Suggests to me it's homeroom.
Okay, but in classroom means, I guess, just not in the cafeteria.
That's right.
But there are no restrictions on when the kids could be eating. If the teachers are up there instructing the class, could they literally be sitting in the back eating meals?
While the bill does not address that specifically, I would assume that the principal and all those in charge of the management of the classroom to ensure that there are minimal disruptions, they would ensure that that's not happening.
Okay.
So this isn't a grab and go whenever you want. It's allowing them right now, under regulation, food in elementary schools can only be provided in the cafeteria.
Right.
What this does is allows for each school, so local control, each school that is currently participating to make a determination about when there could be other ways in which it's done. So right before school,
Before school doesn't sound as concerning, but a cart going down the middle of the hallways, and allowing kids to come out and pick what they want to during the classroom seems to be getting away a little bit from the educational process.
Well, Mr. President, it's been operating really well in our high schools. There's not been any problem in our high schools. And so it's working, in fact, so well. There was a lot of concern when the original bill passed that there would be disruptions. There is no report, but the good thing is more children are being able to be fed and are therefore more available to learn.
And I can appreciate that. I just am interested to see if this is affecting the education process as well.
To date,
and I
it
can
has not.
understand it being done with high school students that might be a little bit more easily controllable and say.
Well, I don't think you know the same high school students that I know.
It's been a while, but I know I was not allowed to eat in
Found
the
that
classroom.
my elementary school students were much more willing to listen to me as an educator.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Right, thank
Mr.
you.
President.
All right, question on the amendment. We'll go to the senator from District 1, followed by the minority whip.
More of a process, Mr. President. I
Parliamentary
wanted to
procedure?
maybe answer, help clarify the question in practicality.
I yield.
Sir, want to speak on the amendment?
Certainly. So in practical of how this works, being a father that has kids in high school and junior high and elementary and those type of things, there is no impact to the educational value. It works seamlessly. The administrators all have it under control so that nobody is disturbed. It really works very, very well in Allegheny County and has for years. So as for the amendment in the bill, very, very supportive. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. All right, to the minority whip.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just one additional question, perhaps, to
Question
the
from
floor
the
leader.
Senator may proceed.
Yeah. So, I think the concern would be doing this. So there's only some schools that get this program, correct? If you're at a certain percentage of free and reduced lunch. So it's not all schools, correct?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Schools currently participating in the program.
Okay. And so the difference, and I think what my colleague was trying to get at relative to high school versus elementary school, is a high school student is probably a little more capable at cleaning up after themselves, keeping themselves together, making sure that they're feeding themselves in a timely fashion. Elementary school children, I can attest to the fact, being a parent of now just one, was two, they are, it's a little bit more of an ordeal for a first grader to eat a picnic lunch at a desk than it is for a 9th or 10th grader. I'm not suggesting they're less slovenly. That actually is true. Teenagers can be pretty slovenly. I think the question we're trying to get at is, if this is happening, these are free lunches being provided, which we all think is a good program to make sure kids have breakfast. They're arriving at school, during a period of time where they should be arriving, often on a bus, not always, in plenty of time to consume a breakfast. So is this limited to before the school day starts, or is this going to be, sometimes it's going to be at 9:30?
I can clarify that.
Yeah, please.
Because it didn't mean to apply that it was an all-day buffet situation.
I assumed it was.
So that, I'll clarify. So what the idea is that the child can pick up their lunch and take it, their breakfast and take it to homeroom. That
Okay.
is the recommended procedure.
Okay. And then it would be consumed there.
Yes.
And the school can make its own rules about when that has to be completed.
Exactly, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr.
Right,
President.
thank you.
On the amendment, any further discussion? Yes, Chair
Only
recognizes
let
Senator.
me- Just for clarification, because I'm not inclined to vote for this bill, I'll tell you why. It sets up the kind of setting, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that it does in committee, permission to use the senator's name, when my seatmate, Senator Folden, he eats 400 bars of Snickers a day, and it disturbs me. I'm bothered by it. So
All right.
unless we can amend him from the bill, do not expect me to vote for it.
All right, Senator.
Thank you, Senator.
I understand.
All
Thank
right.
you.
On the amendment, any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections to the amendment? Without objection, the favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 425 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 737, Harford County Senators, Higher Education, Harford Community College Board of Trustees, alterations favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing Senator from the 35th District is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'll transition from elementary schools to community colleges here. This is a local Harford County bill that has to do with the trustees of the Harford Community College. Currently, there are 9 trustees. There are 3 at-large positions and 6 that are by each individual councilmanic district. So what this bill originally came in to do was to change it where there was more flexibility among the council districts. So it does that, and also this bill makes a technical change to alter the name of the board to be the Harford Community College Board of Trustees in statute. There are 2 amendments. The first amendment strikes the requirement that members reside in a specific councilmanic district and authorizes appointment from the county at large. That puts Harford County in line with pretty much every other county in the state of Maryland. It also requires the governor, when appointing members to the board, to consider geographic and ethnic representation of the county as a whole so that all segments of the population are represented. So I'd like to move the 2 committee amendments and ask for adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 737 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 864, Senator King, University at Shady Grove Regional Higher Education Center designation as Community of Innovation, favorable.
Recognizing the chair of the committee is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Universities at Shady Grove is by far the largest of our state's regional higher education centers. And so over the past 20 years, colleagues, it's really established a national reputation for its unique model, which has proved to be super successful. And in 2022, USG rolled out a new 10-year vision strategic plan focused on innovation with a new sharpened focus on career readiness for the jobs of the next generation. And Mr. President, you mentioned the University System of Maryland's Advocacy Day. I think it was mentioned earlier. They came in and testified in full support of Senate Bill 864, and what the bill does, it designates universities at Shady Grove as a regional higher education community of innovation. And along with this new designation, the bill also expands the designated purpose of USG in a number of ways, including servicing a diverse citizenry. And so there was no opposition to the legislation. There were no committee amendments, no fiscal impact, and the bill passed unanimously. With that said, Mr. President, I'd move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 864 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. And we thank our majority leader for her tireless advocacy to put USG on the map in many, many ways. All right, let's go to report number 11 for Education, Energy, and the Environment. Clerk, read the first bill.
Senate Bill 333, Senator Hedelman, Housing and Community Development, Affordable Housing, Identifying Suitable Property, favorable.
Recognizing Senator from District 3 is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, you may recall that in 2022, the General Assembly passed a bill with the goal of increasing housing availability, in particular on excess state real property. This bill provides clarification by determining where that housing can be and where it can't be. For example, must be in a priority funding area, must have access to public utilities, must have access to ingress and egress, and other kind of common sense parameters. This bill passed unanimously in committee. There were no amendments, no fiscal impact. Therefore, I move for adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 333 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Let's recognize the senator from District 30. I believe there may be guests.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, for letting me interrupt that calendar. But we do have our guests from the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, the young scholars. If you could stand in the gallery behind the Senate President. These are high school students from high schools around Maryland, across Maryland, who are actively working to build a better, cleaner, safer environment for all of their generation. And I just want to thank them for their leadership. They will be in committees today observing the legislative process, and ask the Senate to give the CBF young leaders a warm Senate welcome.
Excellent. Welcome. Welcome. Thank you to our young leaders. All right, Madam Clerk, if we could please read the next bill.
Senate Bill 418, Senator Watson, Seed Community Development Anchor Institution Fund alterations, favorable.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this bill expands the purpose and eligible use of the Seed Community Development Anchor Institution Fund in the Department of Housing and Community Development to include providing grants and loans to anchor institutions for community projects in sustainable communities in the state. The bill also expands the definition of anchor institution to include departments, foundations, and other entities of institutions of higher education and hospital institutions in the state. Finally, the bill repeals the requirement that required matching funds must be from a private source. I move adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 418 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 461, Senator Watson, State Real Estate Commission complaints, advertising violations, favorable.
Recognize the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this bill established that a complaint filed with the State Real Estate Commission alleging an advertising violation may be made anonymously and not under oath, but must still be accompanied by documentary or other evidence. There are no committee amendments. I move adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 461 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 462, Senator Watson, licensed real estate brokers, branch officers, designation of managers, favorable.
Recognize the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this bill authorizes a licensed real estate broker to designate himself or herself as the manager of a branch office maintained by the licensed real estate broker. There are no committee amendments. I move adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 462 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 542, Senator Brooks, real estate brokers, brokerage agreements, requirements, favorable.
Recognizing the bill sponsor is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this is a transparency bill. The bill requires certain provisions to be included in a broker's agreement between a real estate broker and a seller or a lessor and a buyer or a lessee. Yeah. There are no committee amendments, and I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 542 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. So that does that one. All right, let's go to Special Order Calendar number 20. Clerk, read the bill.
Senate Bill 192, Senator Kramer, State Personnel, Collective Bargaining, Supervisor, Employees. Question is on the adoption of the favorable report.
All right, question is on the favorable report. Chair recognizes the senator from the 35th District on the report.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for the special order Monday evening. As we were all excited to go over to the old Senate chamber, I was glad we were able to special order this. We'd take a little time to look at it. So with that, I would ask if the floor leader and bill sponsor would yield for a couple questions.
Appears so. Senator may proceed.
So
Yes, indeedy.
Thank you, Senator. So just to bring everybody back up to speed on this one, this is the one that will allow collective bargaining for most supervisory state employees in executive branch agencies. So my first question is, what is your definition of a supervisor? Is it the same thing as a manager?
No. There are different categories throughout state government, and the definitions throughout state government can change. These particular supervisors will be in a particular supervisor's category, and they basically are sort of middle management personnel in state government.
Okay, thank you. I noticed in the fiscal note that there are almost 4,000 supervisors that would now be allowed to collectively bargain. How much, in your estimation, would that cost the state annually from a salary perspective?
Well, actually, looking at the fiscal note, and I think in this case that's what we are going to rely on, although, interestingly enough, in the committee, the minority whip requested that an inquiry be made of the Budget and Tax Committee addressing that very question. And the response from the Budget and Tax Committee reflected the same comments that are in the fiscal note, that is not something that can be determined at this time. Certainly we don't know whether any of these personnel will even avail themselves of the opportunity to bargain collectively. This just gives them the opportunity to do so if they choose. And certainly we have no idea what it is that may be the subject of collective bargaining should they choose to avail themselves of this opportunity.
Okay, thank you for that. I just want to drill down a little deeper on that.
Please drill away.
All right, we're going to play dentist here. It seems like we've had a few collective bargaining or unionization type bills the last few years that have come before us and we've discussed on the floor.
And that's a very positive thing. Wouldn't you agree, Senator?
It depends on your worldview. On the farm, I don't have no option to do a unionization if I'm having a hard time.
Just a reminder for senators, remember it's not personal, we're in third person here. We're going to direct
That's
our
right.
comments to the chair.
The senator from the 35th District there. So I guess my question is, I'm trying to figure out what this is really trying to solve. We normally have, folks come to this legislation, there's a certain problem they're trying to address. So my question is, what are the employee concerns that are being brought up that are the genesis for this bill? Is it wages are too low? Is it something with the working conditions? What is the emphasis behind this? What is the problem we're actually looking to solve?
So there were a number of issues brought up at the public hearings, which certainly any member of this chamber is welcome to watch. But one of those concerns was that we have a number of these state employees who are, again, seeking to move up their career ladder. one of the concerns they have when given the opportunity to assume one of these middle management positions is that if they accept the position and they're looking to improve their careers and move up the ladder, they are sacrificing the ability to collectively bargain if they choose to do so. As a consequence, many of them will decline these positions, and then we are short supervisory personnel in state government. When we are short supervisory personnel in state government, our constituents suffer because the services are not going to be fulfilled and provided to the extent that they should be when these positions are in fact filled. Very often these supervisory categorized employees are filling in the exact same work that the workers are doing that they're supervising when they go on vacation, when they take leave, when they're out sick. So they're doing the exact same work, but they don't have the opportunity to bargain collectively. So there were numerous concerns that were brought out by the workers in this category, and they expressed the desire to have what so many other workers have in state government, and that is the fundamental right to bargain collectively if they choose to do so.
So it would be more of a desire to want to move up the career ladder than a complaint necessarily about like a certain working condition, then you would say. So and moving up that ladder will oftentimes is for increased salary. So that I think often wouldn't you say it would come back to that, just the desire to try to bargain to get an increased salary?
Not necessarily. Working conditions are always a significant issue, and it is not necessarily related exclusively to wages.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Floor Leader.
My pleasure.
All right, thank you, Senator. All right, Senator from District 6, questions on the report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can I
Will the floor
offer a kind
yield?
question to the floor leader?
Senator may proceed.
Of course, I'd be happy to do that.
I'm happy, you're happy, we're happy. Thank you very much. So knowing that this is something that we're giving them the option and opportunity to be a part of.
Yes, sir.
And making sure that, you know, this is just as my experience, having the opportunity for supervisors. What was their stand, you know, of how they felt about this opportunity?
Every one of the folks that came in and testified on the bill, and colleagues, maybe I forgot to mention it, there was no opposition at the bill hearing to the bill. Every one of those who came in and spoke with regard to the bill were very much in favor and supportive of the ability to participate in what many of us consider what should be a very basic right for our state employees. And thank you for that question.
And it's important to know that. And I appreciate that because I know it's important to me as well as you know. And I just want them to have the opportunity because there's a lot of problems that we do have and problem in labor, but in representation. So
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, sir.
Excellent. Thank you, Senator. All right, Senator from District 2.
Thank you, Mr. President. Quick question, if you don't mind.
Question on the report. Senator may proceed.
Being a representative of District 2 and my colleague here in District 1, we have 5 of the largest correctional facilities in the state. And we were approached over the summer in regards to some concerns with supervisors, management, things of that nature. I was trying to read through the bill, and I apologize, just figured I would just ask you, would that pertain to corrections and the supervisors that are in corrections, they would have the ability then to collectively bargain? Because that's what they presented with us. We've been trying to actually help them with that process. So we just want to make sure that would cover that unit.
And they will, in fact, have the opportunity to participate as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Question continues to be on the report. Any further discussion? Any objections to the report? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 192 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. All right, let's see. Let's go to special order calendar number 21. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 206, Senator Smith, Condominiums, Common Elements, Clean Energy Equipment. Question is on the adoption of the favorable report as amended.
All right, let's see. The question is on the favorable report as amended. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 206 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Let's go to special order calendar number 22. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 585, Senator Simon Nair, boating accident, duty to remain at the scene, render assistance and provide information, penalties. Question is on the adoption of the favorable report.
All right, question is on the favorable report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Recognizing the senator from Anne Arundel has an amendment. Pages will collect and distribute the senator's amendment. Oh, right, DNR. Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Been working with DNR, and they just simply wanted to add the navigational lights to an existing report that would go in this bill, and I believe it's a friendly amendment.
Excellent. All right. Question is on the amendment. Let's check with the floor leader. Any objections from the committee?
Thank you, Mr. President. We view this as a friendly amendment.
No objections from the committee. Any objections from the floor? Without objection, the amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 585 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Let's go to special orders calendar number 23. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 132, Senator Carter, Correctional Services, Medical Parole, Life Imprisonment. Question is on the adoption of the favorable report.
All right, the question is on the adoption of the favorable report. Any discussion on the report? If not, any objections to the report? Yes, Chair recognizes the minority whip on the report.
Mr. President, I have an amendment, but we need to adopt the report first, just double checking. So that's fine.
Perfect. All right, any, before we get there, any discussion on the report, further discussion? If not, any objections to the report? Without objection, the favorable report is adopted. The senator has an amendment. Do you want to start there? All right, pages are collecting and distributing the senator's amendment.
And Mr. President, I got this amendment just recently. I did not have a chance to share with the floor leader. It's a relatively straightforward amendment, so I hopefully not.
All right, we have it up on the board, so Senator may explain the amendment.
I will. Thank you very much. So I don't want to belabor the point from yesterday. This bill dealing with medical parole and life imprisonment. I think it's important to note the distinction between what the policy decision the General Assembly made about parole, removing the governor in past years, which, look, I voted against, but I understood the argument that there had been governors in the past. The governor at the time had done pretty well with this, but the governors in the past there had been past governors who had been, had not wanted to give anybody a parole. They did not want to sign off on anybody. So over time, the desire to want to just have the governor's appointed parole commission be the ones who made that call and was understandable, even though I didn't necessarily vote for it. This is a little bit different because this is a section of, this is dealing with people who've been given life in prison without the possibility of parole, as I understand it, and whether they can be medically paroled. And currently the safeguard left in was that the governor still gets a final sign-off, or if he doesn't do anything for 180 days, it automatically takes effect. I take to heart the concern that if the parole commission has recommended a medical parole for someone serving life in prison, that the reason they're getting that is likely because they're very ill or close to passing away. And whatever my ideological concerns about whether someone who is in prison because they ended a life in all likelihood or dramatically altered many lives, whether they should get the comfort of dying at home or not, that's a separate question, I think, than just whether or not we ought to have just one last check of the governor being able to sign off. So on this amendment, Mr. President, it takes the bill and it would restore the bill back to having the governor as part of it, but it would give the governor 10 days instead of 180 days. So dramatic reduction in the amount of time. The governor would have up to 10 days to either disapprove, approve, or if 10 days went by, then the person would be able to be released on medical parole. And that's a very quick turnaround. In government, we don't tend to do things in 10 days, but I think it illustrates the seriousness that if the parole commission's recommended this person, the governor, whoever they happen to be at the time, should quickly say one way or the other, or within 10 days reply. So I would move the amendment, Mr. President, just to preserve this, though, because this is medical parole for people who were not supposed to get parole ever. So it's a little different than somebody who earned parole because their sentence said they'd have the opportunity for parole. So I would move the amendment. And again, I apologize I wasn't able to share this in advance. So thank you, Mr. President.
All right, Senator has moved the amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd ask the body to reject the amendment. While the offer of the amendment makes it sound reasonable, it really doesn't make any sense in the context of the fact that we've already passed a law in 2021 that removes the governor from parole decisions for life imprisonment. The group of people in the bill before us, which we've previously passed, is a group of people that are medically determined to be so ill and so incapacitated that it's not possible they could pose a threat to the public safety. And so to hold them longer when they're close to, in many situations, near death, could simply just result in them dying in prison, and if that's what the maker wants. Now, I think what's important to note is there are about approximately over the last number of years about 5 people a year that this affects. And when the parole commission makes the decision, they make the decisions based on the underlying crime, the person's adjustment in prison, and all of those things. And then there's an entire medical evaluation, which in some instances, I'm told this process could take already prior to anything extra about 2 years. And so it just doesn't make any sense to single out this group of very sick people and put an additional burden on their release that we wouldn't do for healthy people. So for those reasons, I just think that the amendment doesn't make sense, and it would be a bad decision to single out the group of sick people and put an additional burden on them that we don't put on the more healthy people. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Senator. Let's see. On the amendment, Chair recognizes the Vice Chair of Triple E on the amendment.
Thank you. The senator from District 17. Yep. Would the sponsor of the bill yield?
Certainly.
Thank you. Who's on the parole commission? How many people, and appointed by whom?
The parole commission, 10 people appointed by the governor.
10 people. So the governor already has a voice in the parole commission.
Well, that's a good point. Yes.
And so if the parole commission makes a decision to let someone leave, those members may be reflecting the values of the governor.
They may be. Yes.
And how long are the terms?
They have staggered terms, so there could be
that's what
members
I assume.
From multiple.
That's what I was just going to ask. So presumably they have terms of 3 or 4 years, 5 years, something. Do we know?
I think it's 6 years, but they're looking.
6 years. So, but there would be probably some representation by current and former governors, potentially.
Yes.
Okay. So, but it would reflect the values in their decisions. And does the decision to let someone leave early for health reasons, does it need to be a unanimous, or is it just the majority?
Oh, no. All of the decisions, my understanding, are the majority of 6 members need to sign off on it.
So 6 of the 10?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Mr. President.
I didn't know that. All right. Chair recognizes, let's see if there's someone who's not yet spoken. Senator from District 2 on the amendment.
Thanks, Mr. President. I rise in support of the amendment. I appreciate, the conversation about individuals that are sick. I think we all have compassion for those individuals and feel for them. But I feel we're losing sight again of the victims. As the maker of the amendment stated, the individuals who are eligible for this are not eligible for this because of they've served a certain amount of time and now they're eligible for parole. They're eligible for this because they got sick, and we recognize that. But at the same time, the victims that were affected, just previously could be, just a matter of a few years. And I feel we're losing sight of that. So, I appreciate the conversation about the parole board as well, but I think it's a very reasonable amendment to allow some accountability for an individual, as in the governor, who's elected by the people. So I think it's a very reasonable amendment. 10 days is not that long of a turnaround, still allows some accountability, and so I support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. All right, on the amendment, any senators who have not yet spoken wish to speak? If not, Chair recognizes the maker of the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would ask for a roll call for the amendment. I think just to kind of bring back into focus the issue, if it's as much as a 2-year process, then it's not somebody who's dying tomorrow, although it could be. That's why, again, I took it seriously, and I do, that if someone's been given medical parole, they've been recommended for medical parole by the parole board, that 10 days is enough time. I think having the governor with a final check, I don't think the governor has outsized influence in a parole commission. Certainly the governor's appointees will, you would assume, reflect his values, but there's a different decision-making process to let somebody out who has either committed first-degree murder, attempted first-degree murder, or first-degree rape and sexual assault. That's a serious crime, and while I'm not going to take, I like the implication is, well, you want them to die as some sort of punishment. I think it's fair to say when they were sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, that was a justice for the victims, and that meant you would die in prison. Now, I understand sometimes there might be a reason why the parole commission would recommend that someone could go and not die in prison and die at home or live at home for a short time. But again, I just think leaving the governor in is a smart move. And like I said, 10 days is quick, so it's a quick turnaround. So I press the amendment. I would ask the body's support. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, on the amendment, if there's no further discussion, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 32 votes in the negative, the Senator's amendment does not prevail. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 132 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. All right, Senators, that does it. The desk is clear. We got through a bunch today. That's excellent. We're going to have a long day tomorrow. Expect a long day tomorrow on the floor, so keep that in mind. Busy afternoon, I think, with committees. But let's go ahead and check in there. Chair of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance will meet at 1 o'clock today for 7 bill hearings.
All right, 1 o'clock, 7 bills. Education, Energy, and the Environment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Things are heating up. We will have in Triple E today, starting at 1 p.m., 17 bill hearings. There are 17 bills.
17. Triple E. Budget and tax. It's a competition.
1 o'clock today, 23 bills.
23. Woo! B&T showed it. Are we up in the ante with judicial proceedings?
Absolutely not, Mr. President.
All right, look at that.
We'll meet today at 1 p.m. for bill hearings, and then we have 15 bills.
Excellent. Okay. Long day. Long day. Let's see. Any other additional standing committees? Select committees? Joint committees? Delegations? Anne Arundel, Chair of the Anne Arundel delegation.
And thank you, Mr. President. The Anne Arundel County delegation will meet immediately after floor today for what I hope will be a brief meeting. We'll meet in the Silver Room. Thank you, Mr. President.
Wonderful. Chair of the Prince George's delegation.
Thank you, Mr. President. Prince George's will meet today at 5 o'clock in the Neal Room, conference room. And Mr. President, if I might,
please.
Tomorrow morning, pensions 8:30. Correct time, 8:30 tomorrow morning. We have a robust agenda. Please be on time. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Senator. Any further delegations? If not, a big thank you to Morgan State. The choir had a wonderful performance this morning in the atrium. We're very, very thankful. They're just remarkable. They're remarkable. They sang was it that Star Spangled Banner at the AFC Championship? I think it was the Star Spangled Banner. It was great. They're always phenomenal. All right. Any further business? Any further announcements for the good of the order? If not, let's do a quorum call.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 45 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland remains in session. Chair recognizes the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a kind reminder, Bill will have a pro forma session on this Friday. For those of you that get to go home, I think you'll all be in committee anyway.
Yes.
Okay, but I move the Senate of Maryland stand adjourned until Thursday, February 22nd at 10 a.m.
Without objection, so ordered. Have a wonderful afternoon and see you tomorrow.